All right. Since it's being recorded, my name is April Edwards. I'm a cloud developer advocate for Microsoft. I am also the DevOps practice lead. I sit in the UK. I'm originally from the US, if you haven't gotten that yet from my accent. So we're going to talk about PowerShell for every system. We're going to talk about a little bit about the history of PowerShell, some automation, and I'm going to unbreak my doohickey, maybe. This is why we automate. Right, tooling over tasks. You may have seen this slide in my keynote. We want to let the machines do our repetitive tasks while we build the tools to solve the problems. Take off those heavy loads. The value of automation. Why do we automate? Anyone?
Consistency and to reduce time.
Absolutely. Now, one of the arguments I've had with many operational folks is, I'm out of job when I go to the cloud. You no longer need your storage person. You no longer need your networking person. I'm out of job. You're not. What we need are automation professionals, and it's great to have everyone here at a PowerShell conference. And that equals productivity. And I love this snowver, I'm going in and out, I'm sorry. I love Jeffrey's quote here because it is important to automate things. So we have automation to the rescue. We're going to reduce our manual intervention in production, even before production. We're going to take those manual tasks and automate them. So that is why today we're going to do a little bit of some automation into a dev container. Because how many of you test your code? It's about half. That's a good number. And I got a little hand over here sometimes. I work with a lot of companies that don't test their code. Infrastructure as code, PowerShell, automation, they don't do it. So we're going to talk about some automation. We want to implement automated builds, and we want automated tests, and we want to deliver that to the cloud, on-prem, and unfortunately probably other people's clouds. So the story of PowerShell. Does anyone know the story of PowerShell? Everyone knows the story of PowerShell, right? 1.0 to 2.0. I started working with PowerShell 2.0 in my career. I sat in a class and I was like, I got to manage Exchange and SharePoint and Windows and all these things on Windows. So we had unified and disparate Windows APIs, and it was technology focused in the early days. Then we moved on a little bit, and we moved to scenario focus. So we need to manage some networking, some security and identity and storage and Hyper-V. How many of you still work in Hyper-V? Yes. Oh, you don't count. You're not allowed to participate.
For the worst reason.
Oh.
I only use Hyper-V to like convert vendor images and get them into Azure.
I'm sorry. But this was, for me, one of the first experiences I had remoting into systems. I managed about 200 servers at the time. A small organization called Vail Resorts, a little ski company. But everything was shipped in Windows, right? This was Windows PowerShell. So when PowerShell 6X came out, we went a few steps further. We increased that scope of integration technologies. We increased that. We introduced ubiquity into our systems. We wanted to meet the customers where they were at. And that's why I'm going to start talking about some of the open source stuff, because open source is important. And we all hear about it. And earlier on in my career, I was like, oh, I don't want to touch Linux. And now I touch open source, and it's not necessarily Linux, and it's a good thing. So anything kind of outside the circle, out of that Windows compatibility bit, was when they started really transitioning to .NET and PowerShell Core. And that was, there were many, many reasons for that. And we have PowerShell 7.0. So we moved on. This is kind of what it looks like. It's a little pretty picture. And we had shifts in management. Let's see if this comes up. Oh, this is an ugly picture. I'm really sorry. All right, do that. So Windows PowerShell, right? Windows System Management, all those happy, hunky-dory things. Now we're in cloud resource management world, for most of us. Now I know a lot of you are on-prem today, and that's absolutely fine. So we go from managing those disparate APIs to the cloud, where we're using a lot of REST APIs. We use a lot of things in ARM, a lot of third-party software as a solution services, not things like M365, Dynamics, but beyond that. It's not just the Microsoft products anymore. So they had to make PowerShell Core and PowerShell a lot more lighter weight with better runtimes, optimized for containers. And we're going to need to say this word containers, and I'm really sorry. But we needed to be agile in the product, but also in the cloud. So we have Windows PowerShell. How many of you have read the Monad Manifesto? All right. I was actually going to put it up, but I thought most of you had read it, so I haven't. But it's where they promised to deliver a product for everyone out there, right? So that was Windows PowerShell, and it was the Windows tool. Windows Azure was the exact same thing. Microsoft was like, oh, we got this product called Azure. It was Windows Azure. Over 50% of the workloads on Azure today are Linux-based, and they've always been Linux-based. So we have to adapt that product to match that. So when PowerShell came out, PowerShell Core came out, we had to focus a lot more on .NET functioning. How many of you write really good .NET? You're going to be my new best friend. But when they started putting things in .NET Core, we had to make this cross-platform and run in whatever operating system made sense for you as the customer. Wow, I really screwed up these slides. All right, that's the one I wanted. Yeah, so the other thing that happened in PowerShell Core that's really important, I talked about it a little bit in my keynote, was making things open source. What does open source mean to you? You can answer. No judging. This is a warm, welcoming community. Community driven. Don't make me pick on you. Pierre, what does open source mean to you?
You can fix what you need when you need it,
Why is that?
because you have access to the source.
Open to source code. Anyone else? No secrets? So yeah, I think the open source community is a great place. Microsoft's one of the largest contributors to open source. I'm not going to go into the facts, figures, and all that other good stuff. We had to change how we ran PowerShell and PowerShell Core. So we went to PowerShell 7.0. That was on .NET Core 3.0, and I don't have a mouse clicker. And my slides are done. That's okay. So I hadn't actually finished the slide deck before giving this talk, but that's okay. We talk a lot about it open source in Microsoft. Why? Because a lot of organizations are doing it. There was a time in my career when someone would go, oh, I got this tool I want to use, it's free. We automatically said no. I remember sitting in meetings, we're like, absolutely not. We're not using it, it's free, not happening. We do know that this number is actually a little low, but over 30% of organizations that use open source are more innovative. Now, innovation scares us. We talk about innovation and developer velocity and satisfaction and all these great things at Microsoft. But I talked about my keynote because we want to be faster to market. We want to automate these things and have these things behind us. And we want to make people happy. How many of you love your job? How many of you hate your job? I know, he has to work with me. I have been in roles that I hated. I took my dream job. I moved from Boston to Colorado. Hated it because my manager was a jerk and I couldn't innovate. And same thing when I had to sit and talk to those people and say, no, you can't have that free tool because we don't trust it, it's not okay. I was being told by my manager that, no, you can't innovate. You got to fit in this box. You got to be in a silo. And I'm like, well, hold on a second. I'm not a silo. I'm a Swiss Army knife. So I left. So we need to increase that developer satisfaction. We use this term developer, and I'm sorry. We use developer to talk about anyone that writes any line of code. And I know a lot of people don't like it. Pierre, not picking on anyone. And it's a big, big argument, but we don't have another name at Microsoft. So we always talk about developer velocity, developer happiness, developer satisfaction. It's
Sounds like you're stuck in a box.
You know what? I don't work in marketing, and I have sat here and I do a lot of ops in the DevOps space. How do I find another name? But I don't, and I'm stuck. So I have to. We use the word developer at Microsoft. So I'm sitting here stuck going, nothing, because I'm not good at marketing things.
I can tell it's not a sensitive topic for you, so.
Well, I was on Twitter one day. A former colleague made some comment, and I said, everyone is a developer. And it exploded. Like, I dropped a Twitter bomb. It's like, and she actually didn't talk to me after that. Or, sorry, that person did not speak to me after that. They're no longer at Microsoft. They're an awesome human. She has forgiven me for my faux pas. But if any of you ran around with Stephen Morawski and some other people in Microsoft, I think everyone is a developer. If you write a line of code and tell a machine to do something for you, you're a developer. And people are like, well, hold on. I'm not a programmer. You're right, you're not a programmer. You know, you're not sitting there writing lines of C# or Golang or Ruby and Rust and doing all these things, but you're telling a machine to do something with some code. So there is some truth to everyone being a developer, but we need a better word. So if anyone comes up with it, it's $1 million idea, come to me and we can go 50-50. Automator's great. It's tough.
The term scripter or script kiddie has a negative connotation.
You call me a script kiddie and I will probably be very unhappy with you. Don't call me a script kiddie. Yes, sir, in the smiling man in the front row. In the back.
There's also the
Absolutely. And I think we have such a negative connotation of developers. A lot of us have negative connotations, and I've had some very heated arguments with people. Developers are not people with sandals that sit at their laptop and code all day. Some are. I sit at my laptop and code all day, and I was scared of calling myself developer. I happily embrace that term now because I automate the crap out of things, and I do write some code. Poorly, but I write code. I like that. And universal problem solver, you know? I actually, we're recording this, aren't we? Okay, I need to be careful what I say. My previous manager, when I was in engineering at Microsoft, called me the Battle Lord. And then he started calling me the Windows Battle Lord. I'm like, hold on. Can we just go with Battle Lord? Because he's like, but you know a lot about Windows. I'm like, I know a lot about Windows because I grew up in the Microsoft ecosystem, but I'm not a Windows person. And I don't believe in being a Windows person and a Linux person. And he is like, I'm open source and I'm Linux. And he and I got into a heated argument about platform. And I said, it's no longer about being a Windows person or a Linux person. It's about being cross-platform. Because if you can write code, you can do things across platforms, you are invaluable to your organization. So he shut up. But I was still called the Windows Battle Lord. And I actually have a slide deck in front of a customer where my job title was BAMF. Bad ass mother. Yeah. So I like Battle Lord. That's a cool job title for me. But yeah, again, you can call me whatever you want. I'm just there to solve a problem and make stuff work. So the power of the shell. This is one of these beautiful marketing slides. Places you can use PowerShell. State of the shell within Microsoft and its ecosystem, right? We all know it. We all been there. Give it another week and they'll change the name of a product and the little logo and we'll have to learn that again. And I actually think I pulled up the wrong deck. Right. So distinct areas of momentum. The PowerShell team want new uses of PowerShell. So if you think, oh, I have a great way to use it, haven't thought of it, share it with the team. I'm giving up on this guy. They want to reduce the friction between users for adopting new technologies. How many of you struggled to learn PowerShell when it began? Cool, got a few of you in here. Yeah, it was tough for me. I sat in a course for a few days, and they started touching on little topics like you can do this in SharePoint, you can do this in Windows, in Windows Server, you can do this in Exchange, and I'm like, but I want to know more, and I never got that more. So Pierre and I are actually writing some Learn modules. We want to write the Microsoft Learn modules, which are free. And they give you a sandbox environment. We want to direct it more towards the ops audience. Currently, it's a little bit devy. I know that developer word, but actually focus towards people in ops. Like, why would you use it in ops, in Azure, et cetera, on-prem, and update it for PowerShell 7. The other thing I'm doing is working with the PowerShell team to get the content out there. The Snover videos with Helmick were how I learned PowerShell. But kids these days learn PowerShell very differently. So we're trying to adapt that and pivot that, and we want to go to how the users are learning it, whether we're gamifying PowerShell, or we're putting it on TikTok. I joke not ask Jason Helmick about his burn phone to put his TikTok videos on. But they need us, and I say us that know PowerShell to build that legacy trust. They need to be able to deliver it and deliver it to the platforms we know and love, but keep moving forward with it. So I like Jeffrey's quote here. I think Jeffrey even said it in person on Monday. Learn PowerShell and we'll do everything we can to make the best investment you've ever made. How many of you feel it's been the best investment of your career? Absolutely. Yeah, I do love Pierre. We're good friends, I promise. Yeah, and Satya came in, right? Satya's made a lot of great changes for us. He is a brilliant man, and he's come in and said, right, we're going to build on the dreams of others and the ideas, and we're going to make sure that we achieve it and deliver it, and that open source mentality. Again, the stats are like, we're one of the largest contributors to open source, and things like the CNCF, the Cloud Native Cloud Federation for containerization, et cetera, even the Linux Foundation. We sit in all these places so we can bring that tech into PowerShell. So why we invest? Agility, transparency, community. We love community. So we want to give people that consistent experience over time and make it easier to learn. And that's the biggest thing. How do we... You can't silence your phone during a talk? This is probably like the worst session to record, because people are gonna watch this and be like, what is she doing? So we need to make this accessible for us as the people that have been using PowerShell day in and day out, but we need to make it better for people going forward. And that does include things like using new tooling, et cetera. So we're building on that legacy of customer trust. We're shipping new features, fixing bugs. How many of you saw the list that Helmick and Sydney, and they are cranking out features. And like I said, give that feedback, let them see that. They're doing the best they can to make that successful for you. So we're gonna start talking about Azure now, a little bit about open source, and then we're gonna start writing some code. Do you guys wanna write some code?
Yes.
Cool. So this is a good little map of Azure that kind of shows an overarching view of the services. We have edge devices. So I have a smartwatch. We all have smart devices somewhere in our homes. I've got a smart home. Please don't hack it. That would be great, thank you. Not that you can, but don't try. But under,
Talk was yesterday.
what?
That talk was yesterday.
Yeah, my stuff's not available to the interwebs, and I'm sure someone could find a way if they really tried, but probably not, because I keep it off the web. But yeah, we've got edge devices, right? And that could be anything from like Azure Stack. People running data centers remotely, that all connects in. Azure Arc, I think Pierre works a lot with Azure Arc, don't you? And we have a lot of serverless stuff, and I do a lot of work in the serverless space. I try to abstract the operating system, because that's what makes code and what we do cross-platform and serverless and easier to manage. We lower the customer security footprint. There's less for us to manage. So when we talk about this operational space and we're like, oh, I won't be able to patch the servers and we won't have downtime, yes, we're gonna push our code as developers. Whisper it. And we have all these tools that hook into it. We have Visual Studio and GitHub, and yes, we acquired GitHub. But underpinning all of it is infrastructure. They need us. Storage is the biggest part of this puzzle. Everything we do with devices, serverless, and infrastructure requires storage. You can't run an Azure function without storage. You can't run a Logic app without storage. There's something holding your data and your code underneath that. So open source on Azure, again, we have, this is a beautiful Microsoft slide. Enterprise-grade security and compliance. Yes, we have to secure our code, secure what we're doing. Linux on Azure, all that good stuff. I want to focus on the second piece, the flexibility of choice for modern app development. We say app development. I'm sorry. But you know what I mean, right? We're going to write some code and we're going to do some stuff and have that option. We want to be able to integrate it together and make it portable, which is what we're going to do today. We want to make it collaborative. So not only are we going to sit here in a room, I'm probably going to pick on someone like Pierre to spin up his laptop, and we're going to pair up on live share and write our code together. Why not? There's a plug.
Nice try.
Fire hazard.
Don't give him an excuse. And I'm going to talk about security again. Why? Because anytime we do something in our organization, someone goes, that isn't secure. So you don't really have to. Okay. How do we secure our devices? How do I secure the laptop I'm working on now? How many of you save your PowerShell scripts on a shared file server? Can other people access it without like needing to authenticate into it? Random server in your environment? Okay. I still work with a lot of organizations that do it. I'm like, we need to be using Git, because we need to put it somewhere secure. And we do a lot of Linux. So here's our stat. Over half the virtual machines on Azure are of Linux. And we have a ton of Azure Marketplace images that are also on Linux. Lots of great stuff. I was going to do a demo with Azure Functions, which is why this slide is in here. But Pierre is going to be doing a deep dive on functions. So check out his session on Thursday. So the whole point in here was like, we want to automate something. We want to automate a legacy system. How many of you have ran, oh God, what's the name of the system? Oh, I hate jet lag. How many run an on-prem box and need to connect somewhere else, like in the cloud? We got like 2 people. All right. There was a system I was trying to think of that is super legacy. We can't run in Azure. Anyways, functions. Functions are a great way to hook all these things together. Low code. You can make them event-driven. You can trigger it, and you have traceability. Pierre's going to demo all that amazing stuff tomorrow, so go to his session. So here's my obligatory demo slide. Right. Enough of me talking. Let's make some stuff happen. So I have some PowerShell scripts. This one deletes some Azure resources. We've got to get a bearer token in there. We've got to get a subscription name. Let's install some PowerShell codes. So I actually broke VS Code like, was that like a week ago? I had to wipe the slate clean. This is old code. That's the point. You, sir. All right, that's installing. So we're going to go to Copilot. I hate Bing search. Right. Let's see if Copilot's actually installed. Yep. Right, we got Copilot in there. We're good. How many have used Copilot? We got Justin. I've got another script in here that's pretty bad, where if we don't have, and I picked terribly bad, old, outdated scripts for a reason, because I want to see Copilot do some things. I didn't use any of my good scripts, because that's no fun. This one will delete any resources without a tag. So it's going to pull the resource where tag's not met, and then you can go and delete them. It's basically cleaning up Azure. Yes, sir. Yes. Yeah. I'm going to pull up, that's the one. So the magic of demo where I can have everything on here and copy paste. I can't hide from you all. Hold on. Yes, hold on. I got to make it smaller for myself for a moment. Nope. Yeah, it's F1. It's F1. My function keys are all messed up. Right, there we go. How is that? Don't sit at the back of the classroom. All right, so we're setting up a dev container right now, and we've got some PowerShell. Yeah, sure, let's upgrade everything. Cool. Right, so as soon as this does, it's going to open up our dev container. We can reopen our code in a dev container. Pierre, you need your laptop now. Oh! Hold the line, caller. You know, I might just do this in, like, code spaces.
Our company doesn't allow us to use it.
Really?
No, it's cybersecurity.
You guys have VMware, right?
We have VMware that runs in the data center behind 4 different multi-factor auth. Yes, we do. Any firewall. We're not allowed to run any virtualization on our workstation at all.
Oh, that's so 1999.
I know. We work for finance.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Right. I
You're not going in there. You're gonna work for finance company.
I work for Symantec and it wasn't this bad.
Well, that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yes, it has.
So I just went ahead and opened this up in a GitHub code space. I will invite Pierre to my live share in a moment. Give it a moment to load all my extensions. So how many of you have not seen code spaces? A couple of you. Okay. So I'm just going to go through that real quickly, the magic jiggery pokery that I just did. So I have my code in a GitHub repo, the same one that you just saw in VS Code. Very simply, I go down to my code. So I want to clone my code locally. Git clone, copy, or SSH, or GitHub CLI, code spaces. I'm going to go to create and configure a code space.
Would it work with the local GitLab instance?
Yes. So from here, I can choose which branch to work on. Now, I only have one branch in this repo. I literally set this up for you all last night. I got one branch. It's a main branch. In some of my other demos, I've got 20 branches. I can pull it to a specific branch. So if you're on a working branch of your code, i.e. not main, which is probably where you should be, you can do that. I can also, so this is going to pull up a default code space config. So what I was going to do is spin this up in VS Code, push my changes up to GitHub, and then pull the dev container config out. But I'm letting things run in the background because it can be a bit slow. I can choose my region, US West. For those of you sitting in US East, you have an option. There's also Southeast Asia. I tend to run things out of Europe West because I'm in Europe. And then you can choose your machine type. In the organization I'm running from, 4-core, 8 gig of RAM is set by my administrator, i.e. me. But you can go a little bit lower in spec, and you can spin it up higher in spec as well. And all I need to do is create code space. So what I've done is I've spun up VS Code effectively in the cloud. I have my really ugly PowerShell scripts here. Have a little README. Did nothing with it. We'll use the tagged resources thing here, and you can see my code in here. All my extensions load on the side. Any of my testing tools can run and debug. So I could go ahead and hit run and debug, start creating some testing files. I want to invite my little friend Pierre to join. Pierre. So there's two things I can do. I can join Pierre's session, and he can be working in VS Code, Visual Studio, or CodeSpace. How do I got to sign in? Yeah. Don't worry, you won't see any passwords. So I've just hit share. I'm going to give Pierre my session details. Now I can also do an audio call. I won't call Pierre because he's sitting in the same room. But they have added in audio calls to it. Because before I'd go into Slack or I'd go into Teams and go, here's my invite. But instead, we're just going to share that out. Right. Pierre, do you want me to put it on Teams? I could call you. We could be like, hey, we're 10 feet apart. Really? Was that since like 5 minutes ago, or? You guys are seeing all my stuff right now, and there's probably some rule against that, but you know, whatevs. Okay. Let me move some things. Shh. It is going to be in the recording. Let me change my display settings so we can resolve that. Right. There you go, Mr. Pierre. That's the wrong browser. We should see Pierre join our live session. I feel like we need hold music.
I guess it's good to bring up, you can keep this for the recording, but one nice thing is like you don't have to do code spaces like in the browser. You can actually take your local VS Code and connect it to that code space.
Which I've
Still be able to work.
done. Oh, it's asking me to sign in again. Hold on. Can you tell that I've re-authenticated and rebuilt my machine recently? All right. 2 seconds, let me do it from here so you guys can't see what I'm doing. It's fine. I just usually pre-authenticate everything, but Smart April was like, oh, I'm going to rebuild everything and not worry about it. I can automate my rebuild. Right, here we go. I do automate my rebuild. I just didn't quite check all the authentication. Right, so here we are. We are loading up. You can see it here on the bottom left-hand, code spaces. So I am running VS Code locally on my machine, but I am running the code spaces from my web browser. And Mr. Pierre will join us soon. Are you? Where are you, Pierre? Are you? What? All right. Type the code, Pierre. Let's see if Copilot picks up on it. So in theory, if Pierre and I were in separate places, which we usually are, you just deleted my tab, you jerk. Sorry, what did you say? So start typing something, and it should autofill for you. So it autofilled that, but it didn't write the test. I'm trying to get it to autofill a pester test for me. Can you stop moving when I'm moving? I'm trying to code.
I rewrote all the stuff.
They actually work a lot better than they used to. Come back here. Where was it? Let's see if I can split these screens while we're here. This is really hard to do from the side. Sorry, I need to look from the front. It's not working. Do you notice something missing? So good news. Changes. Bueller. It should do automatically. We should actually be able to see it side by side. not replicating. Is it replicating on your side? Pierre? It's okay. No, it's fine. Didn't go as planned. Well, it started to autofill stuff. I was hoping to add some testing, some pester testing in there. But I'm rebuilding my container. Right. So what we failed to do was write any real code and get Copilot doing anything really fun. That's okay. I've reset up my code space. I'm building my dev container. It's getting angry, probably Wi-Fi dependent. So let's open up the Q&A.
So it looks like your Copilot works well. So one thing I want to know, if you do an F1, there's an option where you can find keyboard shortcuts, which is showing possible completion.
Yeah.
On the right-hand side, it'll show you like 10 or 15 different options, which is kind of fun. It doesn't get it right the first time.
Cool. So it's rebuilding the packages on both sides. We can do that in a second. Sorry, say that again?
So if you have something that's got Copilot anywhere.
Mm-hmm. I do on VS Code. It's rebuilding the dev container, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just start a new code we can get Copilot going.
Let's go to a new window. Let that do its thing. So what I was going to show you is our little dev container in a minute. But this is really hard from the side. Like, I genuinely can't. Sorry.
Almost come up here and sit down.
There's a delay too, so.
Right, sorry, what was the command?
So, I don't know if it, usually I do control enter, but I don't think that's the default key. So if you just do F1. Oh, yeah, it works. Okay, good.
We will get it working in a second. Right, any other questions while I make this work? Anyone? Bueller? Random questions? About the weather? Because that's when spring happens. Right. Sorry, was control enter, Justin?
Usually control enter where you're at, yeah. If not, then usually you do F1, and then like, if you just type Copilot, all the options.
It will bring it up.
Maybe the dev container does not Copilot.
Should have. Actually, you know what we'll do is we'll doesn't seem to be syncing very well today because I have it on one screen, not the other. It's okay. Wi-Fi is our limiter. It could be Wi-Fi. It could be me.
So it just shows that they're on the right. It's like,
Yeah.
if you have a good connection and it's able to make the API call, it won't just show you like the one completion you usually get on the left.
It usually will have a whole
It'll give
list.
you a whole bunch of options. So like, oh, that one's a little closer to what I want.
This is why I didn't bother writing a live demo. It's okay. Wi-Fi is our limiter.
Before you get the code spaces up, that's impressive enough.
Code spaces take seconds. I can do that almost anywhere. What I can't do is the fancy stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
There's a great article, I know it's recording, so I can get
Fine.
There's a great article about how they made code spaces so fast now, like how where they started and all the ways that they optimized it to get to the point where it's really.
So Code Spaces was called Visual Studio Code Spaces.
Yeah.
It's now GitHub Code Spaces. What they've done is they've containerized the environment. So OS is negligible. I didn't go into the history of Code Spaces, but it is actually, for me, an exciting story. They've containerized the environment. The OS is completely negligible, and just write your code. So what should, in theory, happen is this should start populating stuff. We go to our file here, and we should actually be able to see the configuration in our dev container. I've come out of the dev container, but I can see it here. If I go into this JSON file, let me make it easier for all you amazing people out here to see. So we have a name of it. It has a Docker file attached. We can put settings there. We can add settings. Now, I'm in an integrated Linux environment. Does that really matter? Not really, because PowerShell runs on it. We can add the IDs, and we can add other extensions. So if we want to add other extensions to our dev container, so let's say we're writing something in PowerShell, and we want to do something else with another extension and do our whole development environment here, bring in other types of code or infrastructure as code, et cetera, we can put in all the extensions in there. and make this completely portable. The whole point was to show you this, but it's cool. I'm not worried about it. The internet's our worst demon when it comes to the cloud and any of this cool stuff. The dev container itself spins up really fast. I broke dev containers yesterday in GitHub. So that was my afternoon yesterday. That was a lot of fun. I have no fix for it, but the repo I was working in couldn't spin up a dev container. No idea. So I blew out the repo, moved it, and I cried and dropped some choice words.
I think like the real value case for code spaces, I think, is like imagine like that you have like a code base and you have somebody coming in your environment. Like how many times do you have to get them to install the right module, make sure they have the right PowerShell version. If you're working with maybe some API, they got to install some DLL. Imagine you could just point them to the repo, have them click a button in their web browser, they're ready to go start contributing that day.
So most of the demos I work in have a lot more code in it, and that's what exactly we do. So if you spin up, if we clone our repo, it takes a couple minutes for the repo to clone, depending on the size of the repo. We've got to get everyone set up, and it doesn't work on my machine, happens a lot. I work with a lot of customers that don't have high-powered notebooks, don't have admin access. They can't install stuff. They got to call IT and wait. So we spin up a code space, and we get them working. And what I was hoping to do is get Pierre and I writing code back and forth. Then it doesn't matter. But we need internet for that. Another great use case for code spaces is it's a secure environment. So you can put security into this, into your dev container file, set how you want it for your developers, set the compute that they need, and they're up and running within a couple seconds. So it's pretty cool. So it doesn't matter if you're writing PowerShell or any other type of code, but they're pretty portable, they're pretty easy. Any other questions after I break more demos today? Are we all going out tonight? You can stop recording now because we're just going to like talk about less important things. Yeah. It is 1:45. Look at that. Right. Well, so I almost broke everything today. That was successful. If you guys have any questions, if you want to see dev containers in action, I actually have 2 sessions of build. One is GitHub and Azure better together. It talks about GitHub code spaces and security features built into GitHub. So code scanning, push protection, GitHub Advanced Security push protection is now in preview. I can't show it to you today, but it is going to get announced soon. You guys can have a look at that. It will actually block my code if I have a secret in it. Yeah, so there's lots of security features built in, portability, all that fun stuff. Well, thank you for bearing through that. That was fun.